Aiden was in spring, but Nathan just joined us. And, the development that Aiden showed in a few months, I'm really excited to see where he can go. So a lot to be optimistic about, but we have to come to work now.
What could TJ maybe give you?
TJ and Eddie both, Eddie, two different skill sets. TJ's a little more versatile. Eddie obviously knew the position, but their strength, their physicality, both are leaders in the weight room. Their numbers are off the charts. So I'm excited to see the kind of power that they could potentially bring. But there's an unknown element too, and so athletically they both, Eddie's coming from the defensive side of the ball. TJ was a multi-sport athlete, three-sport athlete in high school, and so I'm excited to see how much he can grow and how he's grown in a year. I'm excited to see, what Eddie can do because the early reports are very intriguing. I was very excited about him and recruiting, and I'm excited to get to coach him now.
One of the biggest things your unit kind of works on in a season like this, where it's less new guys and more continuity, like what are you able to build through a time like this?
I think consistency is a big word this camp, and just the consistency of not only their performance and the way they play, but the way they can communicate. We watched some things, our teach tapes this morning in install meetings were examples of poor communication, or maybe there wasn't ME because a guy like JC, who's as reliable as they come, missed a call and it screwed up. It was a tackle for loss against Central Michigan, or we had a play against Michigan last year where two guys went out and our backside went up and there was a tackle for loss right in the fourth quarter. So things like that, those teachable moments where you got a veteran group, we don't have to spend over and over and over on the basics. It's much more detailed in the way we can approach things. And so I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the growth those guys have shown. They are hungry. But there's obviously a target, and they've played their way into that. There's a target. People are going to know you're coming now, and so you have to be able to perform. And I'm excited to see our guys do that.
And how do you build off of the momentum you guys finished the season with last year, bringing it into fall camp and hopefully the beginning of the season?
Well, I think you look at the growth they had and the things that they've done, and then what's out there in front of them, what they want, and the goals we've set forth as a team, the goals individually that each of them have, and they all came back. They all came back for a reason, and to sit there and to say, hey, you're just going to go through the motions and get what you want. We're going to go back to 10-win season, bowl season, playoff seasons, whatever. With all that, the result is not what you're talking about. It's the process and the routine to get there and what that requires, what that takes. And so they got a taste of that last year, 2023, and we lost those 5 games. Those one score 5 games, and last year we won them, and that's the difference. And so you've got that crew coming back with experience that knows, maybe the shortcomings, the pitfall we had against Minnesota last year, that you can't afford those this year, right? Those are things that, the core of our unit coming back, that experience has to account for something, has to mean something. They all came back for a reason, and I can't wait to see them take that next step.
As many guys as you have coming back, are there any downsides or challenges you have to fight against? Just with that kind of scenario?
I don't know if the downside is I think probably stereotypical in the sense that there is this massive expectation. They've been told how good they are for the last 9 months, but I think the way we have run our program, the way our guys are, there is a hunger still. There's a chip on their shoulder. They didn't just come back just to come back, right? Just to collect a paycheck. They all came back for a reason. That was our messaging. Is this has to be a purposeful attack. You don't just get through a camp. You attack the things daily that you need to improve upon. You don't let a mistake wear you down. You learn from it and grow and move on. And so there's just a maturity factor there. Has to account for that. And so we're excited for those guys that got to develop some depth, and that's another thing is that you have to mind, you can't wear them out either, right? You got to get them ready to play, but also have to develop those other guys along the way. So that's our challenge, I think, as a coaching staff, but then to continue to build that continuity and that chemistry, because that's going to be big for us.
Josh, Chris was talking about he's got maybe like 10 notebooks full just of notes he's taken since he got here. Just is that kind of preparation? Is that him? You can go back to something from 2020.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's him to a T. I think the center is your quarterback in the line, and what we ask him to do is very challenging. Not only just have a command of the call, but be able to see a defense, be able to change a call, be able to operate the way he does in protections, run game, and the looks that happen that way. That's all falls on the center. And so he's got to know every position like the back of his hand. That requires a tremendous amount of work, and he puts that work in. But then guys like Josh Gesky, you probably ask the same thing, and he would do the same thing. So there is an expectation there that you don't want to let the guy next to you down, and the work that it takes. You can't just show up and expect to do, to be great if you're doing what everybody else in the country is doing. If you're just spending those 20 hours a week, and you're just spending those 2 hours of practice, and that's it, you go home and play video games the rest of your time or whatever, you're not going to have the results you need or that we demand. And so those guys know that. They're working every day to better themselves. So I think that's the expectation, not the exception.
Have you seen what level of detail are on Cruz's notebooks?
Well, his are very pointed. So it's comments that I'll make about a certain look, or he'll write, something to jog his memory of that, right? Whereas some guys, Mike McDonough, and sit behind and write down everything I say, like a scribe, right? Where Krutz knows some of the other stuff, it's just much more deep, like pointed to what we're and specific. And so that's probably been an evolution. Kramer was the same way. And each guy has their own little way of doing things, right? But what we give them from a resource standpoint, we give them notes, we give them reports, scouting reports, things of that nature, and then they obviously build on top of those.
I asked this of Barry yesterday, Bart, but is it fair because of how many guys you had in spring, not only just your starters, but your depth guys, and then the way that you're able to put your hands on them in the winter, and then what they're able to do in the summer? Does that expedite the install and what you guys can do just during camp right now?
Yeah, I think what it does is it frees up the time in meetings and the time at practice that you can spend on kind of the problems and the challenges, right? So instead of just installing your base run play or your base pass protection to a simple look, you can say, hey, last year, or when we play Duke or when we play Indiana, you're going to see this, this, and this. This is how we combat this, right? So you're just having higher level conversations, and the learning. Their knowledge base is much higher. Yes, you're still installing the basics, still working on the fundamentals daily, but with a veteran group like that, you are, especially when you start getting into the travel meetings and things of that nature, scouting report meetings. You're going to be much more available to go dive deeper, right? And whereas I'm teaching a freshman or a freshman class like used to come in, we'd spend time just going over, a right zone call or a left zone call. Where our guys now are talking about those same calls, or maybe a formation change, or maybe a shift or a motion, and what that's going to do to a cover four safety, what's that going to do against man, and how to recognize that, boundary hash, what you're going to see, et cetera. So you're just much more detailed with a veteran group, and that's the expectation, is those guys have been prepared all year for those types of things.
We hear Luke talk about his relationship with Barry after 3 years. Your relationship with Josh has to be pretty similar, where at this point now are you kind of asking him, what do you like, what do you want to do, what do you want to run, what do you feel comfortable with at this point?
Yeah, I think it's very collaborative. Obviously, we make the final say.
Sure.
This is what I want to do. This is how I want you to handle this. But there's back and forth. It might be, can you get this done, or what do you think about this, or how do you want to handle that? Right. This is how we did in the past. What do you think?
Sure.
So there's a little bit more collaboration. This summer, obviously, with his relationships, obviously. And the way he's played, they've been invited to 1,000 different, opportunities, camps and clinics,
right,
and outline masterminds, and everything else in between, right? And all we talk about is I tell them, hey, let's talk about what you've heard when you come back, and we do. We sit down and talk and say, hey, what do you think about this? I like this. I don't like this. This is why we can't do this, or we can't do this. We talk about the install this week. Before we even met as a staff, or before we even met as a unit today or yesterday, we called Josh, I think, on Tuesday, and we went over the day one install, right? So there's just a little bit more, there's a lot more trust, obviously, that's been built over the last 3 years. There's obviously an expectation. He knows, I know. We've done some little adjustments to make him better, building on his skill set. I can have a transparent conversation and know he's not going to get offended or go in the tank, right? I can tell him this is what happens, and he's like, okay, let's fix this.
Quickly, go ahead. I just want to get with you on, I've asked you this before, but how do you handle guys with positional flexibility in camp? How do you want to handle that? Just like a Brandon Henderson, that can play multiple spots.
Sure. I think one of the things we did with Brandon in the spring was we limited that a little bit.
Okay.
And, guys that do have versatility have to be ready to go other spots, but it doesn't mean, every 2 reps you're moving them around.
Right.
You're trying to build some consistency there, and that's one thing we've done with him. Same thing with Brandon Hansen and some of those guys, even like Zafir, we kept him on one side, And so there's some things I think just as we have grown our depth too, allows us to do that. And I think in years past when we've had some injuries or we've gone thin in certain areas, you try to find the best pieces to go. And we have had the versatility to do that, but now we've got some guys that like the Canapics were a big help. We don't have to move Brandon back out to the left, right? We can keep him going at one spot, right? And getting TJ back. Part of the deal in the spring was, TJ was out for the spring, and so your center position was a kind of a door with a true freshman. Right, and that presents quite a challenge when you're trying to do high level protections against Aaron, Coach Henry, and Gabe Akis and everybody else, right? And so I think all that bodes well for the growth of those guys long term, but it also there's merit to keeping those guys consistently at one spot so they can grow and develop there.
Thanks, Mark.